Rise, pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Mr. Thompson.
Andy Benson here, Katrina Binkowitz, Doug Dake,
Here.
Joseph Wetmore,
Here.
Heather Levine.
Here. So, we have our first public hearing scheduled for 6:31. I'd like to take a moment here and compliment a variety of different people. Mike Long and Guy Crow. Lynn Day, who's not here, amongst others. We closed on the land across the street yesterday. And Milton Metals will start their 9 units. They hope to start Monday. So what that means is that the town got a check for $337,500, and we'll put that in our aid fund now. See where it goes. So, Guy, thank you so much for your hard work. Michael, same thing. Thank you so much. The ventures will continue as they start to build. So, good for both of them. On that note, I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing on proposed 2019 assessment rules for town water, lighting, drainage, and sewer districts. I have a motion.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Mrs. Munson?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Is there any discussion on these? If not, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing. I believe I said that, but go ahead. Is there any public comments?
Yes, we signed it.
No, this is for the hearing on the proposed assessment rules.
Couldn't hear you.
Okay.
If not, entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll move it.
I'll second. Any further discussion? Mrs. Munson?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Now 6:33. This is item number 5, agenda item number 5. Motion to open the public hearing on proposed 2019 Town of Lansing assessment rules and preliminary budget.
Sure.
We have a second.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Munson?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Any public comments? If there's no public comments, someone like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
You have to
We have
stay
to stay
over
over
for 1 minute.
Is there a second?
Sure.
Mrs. Munson?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
We have item number 6, resolution approving the special district's budget and town budget for the fiscal year 2019.
I got this handed to me this afternoon. I haven't had a chance.
We have a motion, if we have a motion, our discussion, we have to, someone makes a motion and seconds it.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Go ahead, Doug.
Now, further discussion?
Yeah.
Katrina, you made the motion.
And Andrew, did you second?
I've not had a chance to go over this, we can take this one this afternoon, and I would like to have a chance to go over it, review this one, make sure it's what I understand to be. And I would ask that this be postponed until the next meeting, which I don't have a chance to go over.
Well, we're going to have a time frame here. Because we have to pass these by the 8th. Which is tomorrow.
By November 8th.
So if you're uncomfortable with it, you can always abstain. But we've had plenty of time for discussion, for questions, to move forward on this. Any other discussion? If that's the case, would someone like to make a motion to,
We need to read.
You need to read all
We
this
need to
stuff.
read.
that was for the second one.
No, let's do it
Okay.
first. There's one resolution.
Oh, I should. So this is the summary of fiscal budget for funds of 2019. Someone like to read the first part? I will.
The preliminary budget for the fiscal year 2019 for the town of Lansing is available as a handout. Next page, councilperson's update reviewing.
You're going to read it and go through step by step? As we did in the previous years?
All right. First one, general fund townwide appropriations, $2,600,426. Estimated revenue, $868,744.21. Unexpended fund balance, $90,000. Amount raised by tax, $1,100,681.79. General fund outside village, $327,404. Estimated revenue, $327,404. Unexpended fund balance is zero. Amount raised by tax, zero. Highway fund townwide, $1,238,718. Estimated revenue, $241,222.17. Unexpended fund balance is zero. Amount raised by tax, $997,495.83. Highway fund outside village, $1,552,315. Estimated revenue, $1,452,315. Unexpended fund balance is $100,000. Amount raised by tax, zero. So the total town appropriations, $5,178,863. Estimated revenue, $2,889,685.38. Unexpended fund balance is $190,000. Amount raised by tax, $2,099,177.62.
Okay. Trina, okay.
Councilperson Andrew Benson is the following. SDB 1, Drainage District Number 1, appropriations, $3,000. Estimated revenue, $10. Unexpended fund balance, 0. Amount raised by taxes, $3,000. Drainage District Number 2, $1,345. Estimated revenue, $5. Unexpended fund balance, 0. Amount raised by tax, $1,340. Drainage District Number 4, $2,760. Estimated revenue, $10. Unexpended fund balance, 0. Amount raised by tax, $2,750. Drainage District Number 5, $1,340. Estimated revenue, 0. Unexpended fund balance, 0. Amount raised by taxes, $1,320. Drainage District Number 6, $3,740. Estimated revenue, 0. Unexpended fund balance, 0. Amount raised by taxes, $3,740. Drainage district number 7, $3,345. Estimated revenue, 0. Unexpended fund balance, 0. Amount raised by taxes, $3,345. Drainage district number 8, $7,602. Estimated revenue, 0. Unexpended fund balance, 0. Amount raised by taxes, $7,602. SL1, Leadville Lighting District. Appropriation, $2,000. Estimated revenue, 0. Unexpended fund balance, 0. Amount raised by taxes, $2,000. Warren Road Lighting District. Appropriation, $6,500. Estimated revenue, 0. Unexpended fund balance, 0. Amount raised by tax, $6,500. Lake Watch Lighting District. Appropriation, $9,000. Estimated revenue, 0. Unexpended fund balance, 0. Amount raised by taxes, $9,000. Warren Road Sewer District. Appropriation, $129,592.25. Estimated revenue, $83,350. Unexpended fund balance, $20,850. Amount raised by taxes, $25,392.25. Cherry Road Sewer District. Appropriations, $29,000, $18.75. Estimated revenue, $25,200. Unexpended fund balance, $3,500. Amount raised by taxes, $318.75. Lansing Water District. Appropriations, $1,308,811.67. Estimated revenue, $770,300. Unexpended fund balance, 0. Amount raised by taxes, $538,511.67. Total special districts. Appropriations, $1,508,064.67. Estimated revenue, $878,875. Unexpended fund balance, $24,350. Amount raised by taxes, $604,839.67.
Great, thank you. So, Mrs. Munson, do we have a motion and a second?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Mrs. Munson?
Andrew Benson,
Yes.
Katrina Binkowitz,
Yes.
Doug Day,
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore,
No.
Ed Levine,
Yes. Okay, item number 7 is Jay Franklin. He's Tompkins County Director of Assessment, and he wanted to share some information with us about solar panels and such. Jay, you want to come forward? Just want to give us some background on this. We had talked about this briefly, and I thought it'd be worth sharing it with the public going forward. And so thank you for your time and your very busy schedule.
No problem, traffic is pretty bad trying to get here. There was a truck pulling out. But, thanks for having me. To start kind of broadly, the New York State real property tax law pretty much controls everything that you're allowed to do here at the town level in determining which exemptions you choose to offer or not offer. Most exemptions you have to opt into. The real property tax law section 487 is an oddball. It's one of the exemptions that you have to choose to opt out of. Real property tax law 487 provides an exemption for the increase in value for 15 years for any solar, farm waste system, wind, and there's a lot of other ones that the state legislature keeps adding on. A lot of those, I don't even know what they are. I have to Google to try to figure out if we even have the potential for some of them. But it seems every legislative session, they keep adding a few different categories to this. A couple key parts of this legislation is that it doesn't allow a municipality to distinguish between different types of energy installations. So it treats your 10 kilowatt system on your roof the same that it would a 25 megawatt solar array. We can't say we're going to provide an exemption for the solar panels on somebody's house, the solar panels that are used on site by a business that has them, but we're going to make the industrial solar arrays taxable. So you're either in or you're out. So a few years ago, the town of Lansing opted out of this exemption. You are not alone. The town of Enfield has also opted out of this exemption. The Lansing School District, the town of Newfield, and the Dryden School District and Ithaca City School District have all opted out of this exemption. Another oddball, there's a lot of badly written laws, and I'm sure Guy can attest to that. But one part of this law is troublesome. If you're in the exemption, you could still require a installation to pay a pilot up until the amount of full taxes. Except there's nothing there to force a property owner to agree to a pilot. In order to have an agreement, you have to have two parties that agree to something. Kind of a basic principle there. So if a solar farm were to come in, and their alternative, if you're in the exemption, is to be exempt, or their alternative is to pay taxes, I wonder which one they're going to choose. And there's really no way that a town could force that to happen. You could hold back a building permit, but a building permit is a ministerial act. Even if they owed the town $1 million, you wouldn't be able to deny someone a building permit if it met all of your other guidelines. So at least in here, in my mind, you're almost safer being out of the exemption. Now that's true today. You're safer being out of the exemption because if a solar farm comes in, a solar array, that's industrial in size, 2 megawatts or more, that's really a commercial entity, and probably at least a pilot would be part of that discussion. But that also jeopardizes people when they put solar panels on their house. But we've been tracking this for many years, and we still haven't seen solar panels on someone's house adding to value. It's counterintuitive to everything that you may think. But if you look at, if you have two identical houses, one has solar panels and one does not, which house would you buy? You'd probably buy the house that doesn't have solar panels and put solar panels on themselves. You would be getting a newer solar panel, a little more efficient, a little more useful life left. You take advantage of the income tax credits. You know that it was installed correctly. So I don't want to say solar panels are a negative on a house, but with everything else speaking, I think a house that doesn't have them would be more desirable than a house that has older solar panels on it. Now, if income tax credits go away, that whole scenario shifts and changes. So as of right now, where they're not penalizing property owners for being out of the exemption, but you're more protecting yourself in case of a industrial solar development coming in.
Have you seen where houses aren't desirable when they have solar panels on them? They've been on there for a while. I mean, have you got any feedback from realtors, that type of thing? The reason I say this is because some of the technology is advancing faster than perhaps people can keep up with it. And one of the concerns I'm hearing is that if something goes wrong, you have the parts to fix it or not. I don't know, like I said, when I say people say that, one or two
people tell me that, and of course, I put it in perspective, that it's 1 or 2 people, it's not 11,000 people. So when people tell me, it's usually a small percent.
Yeah, we haven't heard that it's really a negative to value yet, but I did know of one sale had 5-year-old solar panels on it. When the new purchaser bought the house, he took those 5-year-old solar panels off and put new solar panels on it.
And whatever you gotta do the old ones, you had
I don't know where they were.
commission, they had, okay.
So but they're not necessarily a negative yet.
I'm not applying the arguments, I mean, saying as this thing goes through a cycle, I mean, as you know, nuclear power was the sweetest thing around, so now it's not because of the concerns about the end game.
So we'll see in 5-10 years when everyone has to start replacing their roofs and what would happen when you have to take those off.
So I want to ask one more question, and I'll open up to the board. Is that my understanding is the town opted out, but we did not officially opt. Was there filed with NYSERDA? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, the town opted out, and in my mind, the town is out. There was a court case over in the town of Hartford in Portland County where I think the judge punted and looked in the law, and it says, that a municipality shall file a copy with NYSERDA. I've talked to NYSERDA. NYSERDA doesn't keep track of any of these exemptions. There's a link on their website that goes to the Department of Taxation and Finance. The town did file with the Department of Taxation and Finance. I assume it was filed with the Secretary of State in normal manner. So in my mind, the town is out. But there is this court case out there, and that's why I alerted all the municipalities that opted out of the exemption to say, hey, you may want to consider filing with NYSERDA.
There's a procedure?
Yeah.
Guys, that's just a procedure we do if we've already opted out officially.
I don't know that we didn't file with NYSERDA, so either we dig up all the records and figure out whether we did or not, because there's no way to ask NYSERDA if we filed. Because all they do is link you over to, they have a list of all the communities that have opted out. They got it from somewhere, but in it they reference the resolution or local law or number or whatever it is that they relied on when opting out. And there's more problems in this law. I mean, laudable purpose is poorly written is maybe a good way of putting it. Because how would you even know about some of these projects? And why isn't there a distinction between residential and commercial? And there's just some pieces in it that don't make sense. But that's okay. It is what it is. If the town wants to maintain the exemption, just to play it safe, we should probably send a copy to NYSERDA. I don't know what they'll do with it. I think it would just be killing trees needlessly, but that is apparently what the state mandates.
How would we document that? Because apparently we have to keep track of that, not necessarily.
Certified letter and return receipt requested. Here, we sent it. Here's proof of our filing. That's the problem. You can't really prove it's been filed. You can't really prove it hasn't been filed. My guess is we probably did send it to them if that's what the statute says. So we can either spend 2 or 3 hours trying to research whenever it was done and trying to find that needle in the haystack, or we can just send out a letter. I can go with send it.
And so even then, it was kind of an oddity because it's in the Dryden School District, but it's in Portland County. And on the website for Tax and Finance, it had that the Dryden School District in Tompkins County opted out of that exemption. But it didn't list it for Dryden School District in Portland County.
So, I mean, this is not just a concern because what may happen is a concern what did happen. So, in other words, this isn't the would, coulda, shoulda, we should really cover our assets, so to speak. This actually did happen, and there might be some negative results from it if we don't do this one extra step.
Correct. If we have a large-scale solar wind installation that does occur, with the argument made in the town of Hartford, they could make the argument that the town hasn't opted out of the exemption, and thus they'll go for the exemption.
Well, it's a 5 megawatt one proposed now.
And again, that case is on appeal. From everything I've seen, it appears to be an outlier, but like if I could tell you what a judge was gonna do, I'd be retired already. You know, I'd have taken that McDonald's case, so. I'd say file it and play it safe, why can't we? I think there's an underlying policy question there about opting in and opting out, but I think New York State should fix the law, but that's what 5E gets to decide.
What's the procedure of doing that, then, is something that
Pop it in the mail, right?
that does, or you do, or?
Anyone can do it, yeah, just in the mail and proof that it was mailed. Mailing receipt, affidavit of mailing, affidavit of service, hire a sheriff to drop it off, I don't know, whatever you want to do.
Well, as long as you have some sort of, we've done this in the past, with a variety of other things, as long as you have some sort of certification that you see.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it probably was filed, but I think it's a lot easier to spend the 50 cents or $3 on a stamp than it is to dig out all those boxes wherever they are.
And does any of the other board members have any questions or comments? We just have to go to a consensus here, and
I don't think we have to do that.
I don't even think you have to do that, we'll just get it done. I think,
if somebody needs direction on what to do, and the direction they have to come to Guy or to Deb, correct?
you want to move on to next year, if you have a question, you do call.
Okay, so I guess that's,
Yeah, I think that's the best thing for
Is-
you to.
Is ORPS issuing any guidance on this, or are you just sort of everyone's on their own? Okay, you did, I think you just answered that.
Yeah, when, I'm a member of the Real Property Tax Administration Committee, and I did talk to their attorney, and without putting words in his mouth, hopefully it'll be overturned on appeal because it's just a pad. You know, it's not something that requires it to be effective. But since we have a case so close, I think it's just safe to send off a letter and send the $2 that it costs for the certified mailer. I have no idea what it costs, but something along that, just to be safe.
thank you for bringing that to our attention. Any other?
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, Jay.
They got me anything else?
All right, good.
Sounds good. Take care, have a good night.
The audience, okay. And Patrick, you want to come forward? And your colleague also? Sure. Please. The reason I asked Patrick to come tonight is because we've had the audit for a while, but as you saw in the email, Moody's is getting a little bit antsy. They want this thing finalized soon. And hopefully we'll be able to finalize everything by next meeting. Hopefully we'll have something for Patrick to print the next couple of days, because unfortunately our next meeting is a week from today. So there has been some questions going back and forth, and I'll let the experts answer those questions. For anybody that the board member has, feel free to, board members, ask those questions. Do you want to do a brief introduction first as far as what this audit is about? Because in all fairness, this was a little bit more in detail than the previous ones. These two. And these are all different, right?
So, yeah, there's two documents. So first, sorry. So first of all, so I came myself, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago on the September meeting and the October meeting. And basically just handed out the drafts of our audit reports and all the documents involved, including a overview of the audit. That really, the overview kind of talked about the major change from your last year's audit format to this year. There were a lot of upgrades that were really forced by the industry. We used to just report under what's called the regulatory basis. So we presented your funds, your general funds, your highway, capital projects, etc. Audited those, thoroughly, and it was acceptable in the past. So really, some changes came about, and the industry, the profession said you can't really do that anymore. You really have to have a full financial statement under generally accepted accounting principles, which includes your government-wide financial statements, So that takes you from there's basically a set of, from your funds, fund financial statements, adds in a bunch of things which I included and presented last time here. This really summarized all the documents, but on the second page of the overview of the 17 audit, it summarized the funds, your general fund, townwide, park, town, highway, both of those, water, sewer, capital, and non-major. And then it shows you what's new. So from the governmental fund balances of $3,063,000, the additions under this new presentation, capital assets of $9.6 million, your equity interest in your joint venture, and a couple of things I've corrected, and that's why I'm handing this document out. There were some alignment problems in those funds going across from the captions on the left across the revenues, expenses, etc. Also, I explained a little bit about what the equity interest in joint venture is. That's the Southern Cuyahoga Lake Intermunicipal Water Commission, or Volt Point. So I just added that terminology to clarify. And I think there was a typo on the first page. Some language was copied in and not updated for the town of Lansing. So I cleaned that up. This is really not an official document of any kind. It's required communications on our letterheads, our independent auditor's opinions, and the full financial statement audit. This is just to help you understand what all is presented and some brief condensed financial information on both bases, on the fund financials and full accrual, which includes the capital items, that I didn't work all the way down through there. The deductions on the other hand from the fund financials. So your bonds payable and your long-term bans payable are deducted from your governmental fund balances. Compensated absences is entered in. And this big liability on the government-wide is other post-employment benefits of 2.2 million. And there's a lot of footnote disclosures. That is because all governments had to adopt this GASB 75. GASB is Governmental Accounting Standards Board. Here, because we were implementing a higher level financial model, we did it 1 year early, so we didn't have to adopt one post-employment benefit liability and then upgrade it next year with another adoption. So by next year, everybody has to adopt this GASB 75 and recognize a liability, in your case, $2,200,000 for future health care obligations for retirees, and also factors in active employees also. So those are the major, just to walk through the major changes between the two statements. We audited the funds as we always have, and when we basically helped implement all of these other financial layers. And I got to get Conrad White here. He's a supervisor with us. He really was the primary person in charge of that, really bringing it from that prior level up to this, and for the first time building all this government-wide presentation. So as you said, we have heard from Moody's. There's some delays, some on us, some not on us, but we really want to get it out in the next few days. So I guess it's as much as you want us to present this tonight in more detail, other than the overview and the related documents, the required communications we went through, the overview, and I don't know if you want us to walk through some parts of the main financial statement or not, so get it to a point where you can.
I think it's going to be up to the board. I mean, I understand this is a little more involved than before, but as you know, audits are done as a snapshot to see where you are and where you're headed. And are you headed in a good course, or are you headed in a bad course? And I've always seen audits, not to be intimidated by them, but it's like getting a health checkup. You want to do it now as opposed to doing it 40 years later and you go, OMG, wish I saw that. And that's why we rely on your expertise, because you're the experts. And we also understand that it was time consuming. Conrad, your mail has almost started to come here. You've been here so much. I understand that, but you've been a very enjoyable person to work with. I mean, you're very respectful, and you ask all the questions, because it can be very defensive when people are asked certain questions, because you're looking at all their books. We're open. If you see any red flags, if you see any things we need to tweak, that we need to, I'd rather move the asteroid an inch now than try to move it a mile 5 years
Well,
ago.
basically, because we came to deliver all the documents, and they were fresh to you, you didn't have a chance to look at it at all. So now we've had a couple, 2 to 3 weeks to see if any questions have arisen. We did, so I talked about the changes to clean up on this overview, and the only other thing we've changed since that first draft is clarify, this does include on the government-wide statements, the statement of net position. This is the 2-page financial handout here. This is pages 5 and 6 of your main audit report. We just clarified the caption, what is a component unit? So it's the Lansing Housing Authority, so we have component unit slash or with an underlined header, Lansing Housing Authority. So you are required to show that entity in your audited financial statements if there is enough control or financial influence or oversight that it's a component unit of the town. So that's just to show you that we added some terminology to clarify that on top of those 2 columns that's described in the footnotes. That's the only thing I've changed since the draft. We talked about a lot of things. There were a lot of questions that were circulated, which I think was great to give that opportunity. I hope everything was answered. The only thing I can think of that we may prefer to guide possibly is if there's some question about fire, oversight of the fire, and that goes back years here, so that hasn't changed. It's nothing new. I don't know what page the document there is on page 8. So
Well, we've had an opportunity to look this over, at least 3 weeks, have an opportunity to engage with emails, back and forth with questions. And obviously, the other board members will be allowed a moment to ask more questions if something pops up, because I know this is a lot of information, and sometimes I get cross-eyed when you look at these balance sheets, but that's why I ask the professionals, where are we headed with this also, because that's what you do, and that's why we pay you the money for it. But having said that, you know, I guess what I'm concerned about obviously was their credit rating also, is that what's the next step? Let's say hypothetically tonight, you've answered the questions that you have already. We finalize this, and I guess the next step would be to pass it at our next meeting. That would be before a deadline. And having said that, would there be any, I'll ask our attorney, is there any procedure to do that for next week besides simply putting on the agenda to approve the audit?
No, all you have to do is approve it if you accept if it's final and you've received assorted formal and informal recommendations based upon the results and you accept it as a final audit, then all you can do is approve it as such, and probably should send a copy to whoever is doing send a copy to Municipal Solutions so they know if they put a bond or a barn out to bid that you have an audited financial statement, but other than that, you're okay.
Well, you know, we've been in communications with Moody's also. You have also the fact that this is a work in progress, and they've been very nice about the whole thing, saying we understand that you weren't negligent. Is that they also understood because of the scope of this audit compared to the other ones, and next year it'll go a little faster because the first year is always the most difficult when you put the pieces in place. We all know that. So, having said that, I'll open up the floor for if people have any questions for you two. From our town board members.
Sure, I'd like to start where you were kind of going to, is the whole question on the fire department. When you say we have no oversight, you have to appoint the commissioners, and that seems to be a contradiction. I'm not sure whether it should be changed or not. I don't remember what page it was on.
Page 12.
Page 12.
Okay, that reads, you want to read it? It starts here, right? Furnishing of fire protection in the area in the town outside the village is not a town function. Instead, it is the responsibility of the fire commissioners who constitute the governing board of the Lansing Fire District, whose boundaries encompass the entire town, including the village. Fire commissioners are elected by qualified voters living within their fire district. Go on. Fire district operations, including the financing thereof through real property taxation, are carried out under the direction of the fire commissioners. The town, therefore, has no oversight or managerial responsibility over the function. That sounds reading. We can modify that if needed to
Well, I remember it's appointing people at the beginning of the year, so it doesn't seem to match what that paragraph says.
They're elected and we formally
This is very similar.
sign off.
Yeah, this is very similar to Lansing Housing Authority, where we appoint the officers also there. And there is no oversight from us besides the appointment of the officers. So to me, these are fairly numerous as far as that goes.
Okay.
So this is not the first situation where there has to be an approval of the Lansing Housing Authority. We've done it in the past, I believe, correct, Doug? Where you've had to, when they've been an appointment to the Lansing Housing Authority, we had to appoint the officers or pass the officers for that. I don't know why we're the governing body for that. There's going to be some sort of relationship there. I'm sure there's probably some relationship with the fire company also.
Well, the housing authority is different. The housing authority is a statutorily created independent corporation that is affiliated with the town. Fire district as opposed to a fire district as opposed to a fire protection district. They're two different things. Fire district is a separate governmental unit, a separate taxing authority that has its own elections. So when we appoint a liaison or we acknowledge who it is that was elected or step in if there's a problem, that's not oversight. We don't have the ability to audit their books, to purchase their fire trucks, to tell them what's a good purchase, what's a bad purchase, or to tell them what type of training they should have in terms of internal versus external fire control. Fire protection districts are different because they are town controlled. It's there's about 5 or 6 different variations on that theme, and don't even start the whole problem with ambulance districts that's right in this county. But we do not have oversight of the fire district.
Then what's the point of appointing the fire chief and company captains?
Because the town has to have a fire chief, just like it has to have a dog warden.
So it's a formality essentially, because the voting, the electing of them and the taxation is not under our jurisdiction.
Right.
Correct. We can appoint whoever we want as a fire chief. That doesn't mean that they're licensed to go out there and fight fire. Normally, best process is when you appoint a fire chief, you select a captain or whoever's in the fire district that's qualified to do that type of work.
So really, this is a big New York State asking us to do something that makes no sense.
Well, it's a holdover from a very old form of town law that most of town law is based on what existed in 1929, but we're doing better than the highway department because most of their laws are based on the laws of 1909. So things like appointing a fire chief, that's for purposes of coordinating with the town in the event of a disaster, an emergency, et cetera, et cetera. It's not for us determining who's in charge of their firefighting operations.
Okay.
It's like a liaison officer. It is an official title, much like a dog. We don't go out to our dog wardens' facilities and direct their work, even though we appoint a dog warden.
We don't pay the fire chief, do we?
No.
So just to clarify, this is all within the reporting entity, describing the entity, and this describes this oversight, what organizations you have oversight don't. And that's kind of leads to what you include as a component unit. So if you have the oversight over the fire, then it would become a component unit. So we've gone through that, that process and decided that's not a component unit of the town.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because it didn't make sense. That was very helpful. The other thing I'd like to go over is the last point we were discussing, the whole idea of there's some kind of threshold at which you don't put things on a balance sheet because it's not worth carrying it from one to another, and how that matches up with accrual accounting. So I just want to be more interested in a little bit more detail on that, please.
Yeah, we have pretty,
What's the threshold, for example?
what's fund by fund, and it's a calculated amount based on our audit methodology. We have gone to a product recently, the RSM, which is a high-level alliance firm, the biggest firm worldwide, I guess it is. And there's a pretty detailed methodology of you're taking your assets, your revenues, the higher of the two, and there's a formula that's involved and kicks out, materiality, a tolerable misstatement, etc. But then it becomes more complex when you have payroll across all the funds, as the example.
Yes.
And the fact that a pay period that happens in the first week of January, for the most part, is December expense, but it's not all. So,
I think it is all.
well, we went through the calculation today.
Is it?
There's some Judge,
Miscellaneous.
miscellaneous.
It came to about, and I think Deb Munson was in there in that conversation briefly, what, $68,000 is the carryover,
I
I
think
think?
there was something like that.
Yeah, like $68,000 was carried over, and we're talking a total amount of how much money. Might put that in perspective, if that would be insignificant or not.
And the funds use the modified accrual basis on full accrual.
I understand that.
There's 52 weeks recorded for salaries. In the past, some of the dates did fall into January. It just happened to be this year,
Oh, okay. Okay.
December 31st. And if you look at it fund by fund, one fund barely met the materiality, it's right on the fence, to accrue that one fund and not the others. And it wasn't even a matter of accruing, it's to make you fix the books that were closed out, submitted, the AAG submitted, that we decided it's an audit finding or a misstatement. We don't consider it a misstatement. Going back further, there were more days that flopped into the succeeding
Yeah, I
year.
see what you're saying. I'm looking at that year and that year, it just happened to
Yeah.
flip on the exact day.
But still, we had to back out 9 or 11,000 that were 2018 salaries. Take it down lower than your $60,000 number. Anything else? So we,
When we look at it on a government-wide level when we're talking about the accrual. Fund by fund, it's not as easy to break out by fund, because what we look at is the entire payroll ledger. So for that first payroll of 2018, that showed a portion going back to 2017, it would be difficult for us to say this goes to this fund, this goes to that fund, this goes to that fund. So when we look at materiality versus how much extra work we would have to actually accomplish this, the amount itself wasn't significant enough to say, okay, we need to disperse it and then we need to back it out back into 2017. Now, there are some situations where that might be the case, where we have to back the amount back into the financial statements of 2017, and that would be more on a government-wide level. That would not be on the fund level itself.
Yeah, that's really clear. Now I'm starting to understand what the threshold becomes, is, how much work versus what you gain from it. That makes sense.
and we have materiality levels fund by fund, but also government-wide. If you look at it government-wide, it's way under threshold material.
Okay. Another quick question. I'm looking at the sheet, and you've got the other post-employment benefits, and this is a summary of the big book. Where am I going to find that in this book?
So, the big book for, you're talking about the notes.
Yeah, it's just, the GASB 75 line, 2020.
So if you're looking within the statements themselves, in the statement of position, you will see that on page 5.
This is the new page 5.
Well, the numbers are the same, it's just the header that was
Okay.
So that would be that $2.2 million under non-current liabilities and obligations. Now, in addition to that, we have the $57,000 that we have already deferred outflows of resources.
I'm still looking for it there on page 5.
Well, post-employment benefits liability, it's about 10 items up from the bottom, and the governmental.
Oh, okay, yep,
activities.
I got you.
So that's the $2.2 million. That's the actual liability.
But there's probably 5-7 pages of detailed description of that, and assumptions, and,
That number there says $2,243,000.
well, because we grouped the other less, well, they're more complicated to explain. There's deferred inflows and deferred outflows related to that. The number on my overview groups it all together.
So if you go to page 34 of the big document, you'll see a little ways up in the bottom, that current year activity section right there. That shows you the actual OPEB liability. And another thing that GASB 75 also asks us to do is that we also have to account for deferred outflows of resources. Also $57,000. So the net impact of GASB 75 was 2.1, almost $2.2 million.
Right, I'm just trying to see where we're getting from all of this. Okay.
So starting on page 30.
Yeah, I'm starting to follow it on this chart here on page 34. That's making sense as to how I can, follow the summary into the book.
And further into the book, there's all the assumptions used by the actuary. There's a ton of information, how they arrived at that number.
Right.
So as
And then page 46 is where that's actually going to get worked out over time. Each year we're going to add to that. And then this is the same number we're bouncing, we're running this page, correct?
How often? So this is from an actuary report that had engaged an actuary this year. And how often do they need calculations? Not every year, but every 2 years.
I believe it's going to be every 2 years that you're going to be required to have an actuarial service done. I believe every other year you get an internal report. So every second year you do have the full valuation completed for the town. So on a yearly basis, this will grow. This is just what Gatsby is requiring us. We have to show the 10 years in.
I understand that now. So in the next year, 2018, we're going to kind of do an internal version of this, and that's going to show up here?
No, the actuaries will send you an internal report.
Okay.
And we have to do the same work based on the internal report that we did based on your full valuation. So on this page, what you'll see is 2008 get cut off. And
Yeah, it moves over, we'll get a new number each year, in 10 years this will be all full. Just like there's another one that's only about 2/3 full, and that's one that's working on the units, that one was.
That's the FD68.
Yeah, and that's one that we're just working through because
Because it was new 3 years ago.
yeah, okay.
So when's Gatsby 78 come?
Oh, they're already up to close to 100. At least 9.
I can't keep track.
Some will affect you, some won't.
Any other questions? So moving forward, we finalize this for tonight and be in a position to accept this at our next meeting on the 14th. It doesn't mean that no one's allowed to have any more questions if things come up.
You look at me when you say that.
I would be disappointed if you didn't, Joe. But on the other hand, in all fairness, a fresh set of eyes is always good. So these questions are welcome. And thank you. You explained it far better than I tried to do tonight, and that's why I think it's good that we have the people that we pay the money to, but also the fact that we have confidence because you've been here for a few years. And once again, if we're at a comfort level now to move forward on this, I think next year we'll probably have this discussion, I'm hoping in October instead of November or maybe September. And there'll be other questions, I'm sure, as this funding is approved. And then who knows, but then you may have to do another whatever.
Well, what we plan to do is, so there's a little delay on the full point report, not usually, but we can just roll forward that number, have it all ready to go, to just drop in a new number when we get the report. And hopefully come for July meeting, August at the latest.
Well, I think we should probably schedule that to start these conversations earlier. When you guys can start, but I also know that you guys certainly, in your schedule, there's certain dynamics happen where, whether it's the schools, when they kick in, all of a sudden you have your workload is trying to get your early taxes in as opposed to the deadline type of thing. So we'll work with you as best we can, even though there's still a few numbers that unfortunately are time sensitive and we can't push those ahead. So we'll work with you on that as we have in the past, okay?
Some clarification, so go ahead. Print final reports, have them available for next.
Finalize. Okay.
Just deliver them, you'll accept them.
Okay.
Unless there's some change in here.
Well, exactly. I mean,
Right now, it's just page 5 that's changed. And then you're going to fill in a couple of blanks that are the dates that things happen.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a management representation letter that will get to you to sign and send back, and that becomes the date of everything.
and then what happens is that we may have a copy or two in the office that we finalize. We also can have this on a PDF if some people want to look at it. Finalized version. When you finalize it, can you send it to Munson so she'll have it available on a PDF? We'll hopefully get it on the web. If not, like I said, also it's available if you want to come get a copy. Okay? All right. Okay, thank you. Part-time informational aid in the town clerk's office. Second. Any discussion? Oh, goodness gracious, they got warmed up, didn't they, huh?
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
I moved it as a second.
Any further discussion? Okay.
Ann Benson,
Yes.
Katrina Maplewood,
Yes.
Doug Dave,
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore,
Yes.
Edward Williams.
Yes. We have two more things to discuss tonight, at least. One of them, we're privileged before now. So I want to get the sign-in sheet. This will be a limit of 20 minutes, with a maximum of 3 minutes per speaker. Please keep in mind that the intent of the privilege of the floor is to talk to the board members and to perhaps give us information or items that we can perhaps research and get back to you on if there's questions or concerns. Move forward from there. And we're waiting for Mrs. Munson to come up with the sign-in sheet. Like I said, we hope that you're respectful and that you do 3 minutes and that's it. If you want to also hand in a hard copy, you're allowed to do it also. Please keep a record of that. I must say, you are moving well. Bones are healed good.
Doing better.
So the first one is Stephen Smith.
Well, I'm sure everybody knows why I'm here, but I went to the Cuba Lake, threats of Cuba Lake. They went over one of the topics was lead and salmon creek. And a lot of the hippies or the awesome advocates, they said they had a lot of trouble with understanding how the building permit just kind of flowed right through here, because, they just don't understand they think lead is bad news. So, I have to remind everybody, in 1972, it was the awesome advocates or the environmentalists or whatever stopped a nuclear power plant from being in Lansing. I'm sure it wasn't the people in Lansing. So you can't totally write those people off. Anyways, I've got a prepared statement from the Citizens for a Lead-Free Salmon Creek. Okay, here we go. Hopefully I can read it okay. Okay. As citizens, we rely on our elected representatives to keep us informed of the issues that we believe are important to the town. We attend meetings when these items are on the agenda so we can keep abreast of these issues. And like myself, we watch the town meetings that are provided online. Recently, some of us attended the October 3rd meeting of the town board with the agenda item update on the Lansing rod and gun. We listened attentively at the meeting as questions were asked about the permit requests, including any associated stormwater plans. We listened to our supervisor and town attorney say there are no applications pending that I'm aware of the submission. There's no applications that I'm aware of the submissions concerning stormwater. If the DEC approves the SWPP for the Lansing rod and gun, they will still need zoning permit or whatever. And then it was asked, when asked the next step might be, our supervisor responded, they would need to apply for a building permit. You can imagine our surprise on October 17th when we learned that the building permit request was actually submitted September 28, 2018, 6 full days before the October 3rd meeting. And we learned that the town had issued by the zoning officer determination about this. We learned that he issued a building permit. Okay, as citizens, we feel that we were purposely misled on October 3rd as those who were asking questions on our behalf. We believe the permit application being highly controversial in our town would have been reported immediately, and given the legal implications for the town, would have been relayed to the Lansing town attorney. Hence, we think we were purposely kept in the dark and that the responses to our board members' questions were terribly misleading at best, and what some are calling misleading or lying. Is that 3 minutes?
It's
Okay, I'm just calling down.
It's 3 minutes.
It is 3 minutes.
I got just one last little. At this point, we are calling this a misrepresentation or lying. At this point, we wonder what other misinformation is withheld from some of our board members. We would hope the entire board would review how this information was shared. So if it didn't make any sense of that, I'll submit this card back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have John Berger.
Good evening. I would like to also speak about the same issue, and my esteemed colleague back there, Gay Nicholson, also be talking about this. I think it's almost necessary to see these comments together, as well as anyone else that's making comments on this topic. It's kind of complicated, but also not complicated, and I think it's really important that we only have 3 minutes here. Can I submit written comments later about this?
Absolutely.
Like, this is, you can see, it seems kind of like we're forced to speak blah, blah, blah about something that's obviously very important to us. So first I want to say, how far back do you want to go talking about this? And I've been researching this, and I researched it back to the 1790s when trap shooting first began in the United States. And I learned this online that originally live pigeons were used for trap shooting, and they used passenger pigeons. And this website said at that time passenger pigeons were very plentiful. So that's kind of like going back to the good old days. But I want to jump to 2017 and talk about the gun club submits again in 2017 a plan to the planning board and consider a plan that they have. And the planning board, my understanding, thought that it was very confusing and incomplete. And so it just sort of, things just didn't seem to go anywhere for a while. And then on June 20th, I have a letter right here from Barclay Damon, the law firm Barclay Damon, which is representing the gun club, says that they're indicating that the intent of the club is to flip its existing trap shooting range area with its rifle pistol range area, and that for that and another reason that a SUP, which is a special use permit, is not needed. So basically, their argument is that there's no plan, there's no problem. And I think at that time it seemed like some people thought that there was a problem and that people were kind of uneasy with this. So that's what I thought people were saying, and people on the town board were saying that. It's not just some of us neighbors or people who live in the community were saying that. I think it was seen as a general thing. So I want to jump now to September 10th. I'm going to have to not be able to read the stuff that I wanted to read from this letter, but on September 10th, Mr. Crow said that, this is a letter to the EPA, which I think we're missing something. We're missing a letter from the EPA to Mr. Crow, saying that a variance would be needed if there were a site plan application. And he says in number 6 of this letter, which I'm sure you have this letter, maybe, I'm not sure who has this letter, and who can read this letter. I think the public might be interested in seeing it. He saw no reason to do anything because the club had withdrawn their application. And quote, I had thought that logic was shared by the Rod and Gun Club and its representatives. Of course it was shared by them, it was their logic. So this to me is a very peculiar statement. And if I'm running out of time, I just want to say that I've seen a lot of movies where there are TV shows where there are lawyers on both sides. I've never yet seen one where there's a lawyer representing a person or a town trying to defend them against whether it's hog lagoons or uranium mining or maybe something like lead contamination, and the person protecting or representing the industry says, opening statement, we see no problem with this. And then the lawyer that's supposed to be there for the town, being paid by the town, turns to the people in the town and says, well, they just said there's no problem, because there's nothing we can do. So I feel like it's almost as simple as that. I mean, the language that's being used by Mr. Linde is precisely the language that's in this letter, which is dated June 20th, 2018. And he says, quote, this is purely based on my interpretation, and he changes a couple of words. It is plagiarism, but he's changed a couple of words from what they say is flipping. He used the term swapping. He used the exact same thing, and he ends by saying that therefore there's no need for a permit. If I can go through one more thing, as I know my time is running out, but hopefully our time when we have a zoning board of appeals is not going to be running out. The DEC, this is to me an example, I thought of this expression, reverse perverse engineering. Reverse perverse engineering. In cases including, this is the DEC, in cases involving substantial modification to a project, DEC, prevaricate, may decide that a renewal or modification will be treated as a new action. Just keep that in mind. Then they say a decision by an agency to deny, permit, or conditionally permit is subject to a seeker. Subject to a seeker. If there's no permit, obviously there can't be any seeker. So to me, this is pernicious, you know, and I feel like you folks, Mr. Crow, you know, you have some legal finesse here, I know. But I really,
thank you.
I really request.
Thank you, Mr. Berger.
Yeah,
We gave you 5 minutes, we gave you 2 more minutes. If you
All
want
right.
to give us some summation,
I
we
will
would
do.
appreciate it,
I'll
okay?
be doing that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next is Gabe Nicholson.
Yes, I also would like to read a statement and record. As citizens and taxpayers in Lansing, we want to be able to trust that our needs and concerns matter, regardless of who is elected or hired with our tax dollars to do a job. We want to trust that person to work toward protecting the entire community, especially when it comes to public health. This is a basic element of our democracy. Even more vital when the health of children is put at risk. People agree to participate in a democratic system when they feel that the collection of agreements that make up that system are shared by all, especially the principles and values underlying that system. We are interested in collaborating to find a solution that works for everyone on the matter of the gun club. But transparency is the value that most supports collaboration, and that has been lacking, especially in the past month. Back in March, when the planning board hearing was held, and as recently as the September 5th board meeting, we had the impression that the board and staff shared our concerns about the impacts of toxic lead waste on public health and local wildlife. Citizen volunteers made the effort to provide you with reading materials to familiarize yourself with the issue of lead toxicity at gun ranges. But that sense of shared purpose around protecting public health evaporated in October when the town's code officer, attorney, and supervisor failed to be transparent about a radical shift toward enabling the gun club's choice to continue poisoning the neighborhood, groundwater, and the stream corridor with more tons of lead pollution. The rationale for issuing that new permit, as explained by the code officer and town attorney, as John noted, is very similar to that offered by the gun club's attorney when they withdrew their first widely opposed permit application back in June. Unfortunately, this leaves the impression that our supervisor, attorney, and code officer have been working directly with the gun club on a solution that most certainly does not work for everyone. You know, again, we are interested in a solution that works for everybody involved, but we're not currently on a path toward that goal. For several years now, the gun club's neighbors in Lovellville and others concerned with the health of the Salmon Creek watershed have advocated that the gun club accept the simple solution offered by the EPA, which was switch to steel shot. The club would not have to clean up their existing toxic waste. They would not have the expense of moving their track benches. They would be able to continue to enjoy the social aspects of their club without the expense and discord of lawsuits. They would not face the impossible task of complying with the EPA's required periodic lead removal permit, a steep slope adjacent to the creek. And the members of the club would not face the condemnation and anger of their Lansing neighbors that they have betrayed by choosing to double down on their toxic legacy. Our goal is to find a solution that works for everyone and to restore a working trust between our town government and the full community. We would like to see an outcome that does not permanently pit gun club members against the rest of the community. But if the gun club refuses to pursue a win-win solution, we expect that our town government and the town attorney to develop and implement a legal strategy that is more than just trying to avoid being sued by an NRA Act law firm. We want to see a legal strategy that aggressively defends public health and reduces our collective long-term risk and liability. We ask that the full town board conduct a thorough investigation into the events surrounding the issuance of this building permit, accessing outside legal assistance as necessary to determine how exactly the public's trust in our collective ability to safeguard community health and well-being can be restored.
Thank you. Next is Lisa Mazika.
I was at the October 3rd town board meeting. At that meeting, I spoke about how secretive the Rod Gun Club was, about their intentions after they had cleared 2 acres of land, how uncomfortable Tim and I were living next door wondering what they were going to do. I had asked if the town had any knowledge of their plans. We were told that they submitted a stormwater plan that was with the town engineer for consideration. Tim asked what the process was, because we heard over and over again there was a process. We had to wait. There was a process. We just had to be patient. We had to wait. So Tim said, had asked, what is the process if this plan were approved? We were told they have to apply for a building permit, then they would have to go through zoning. October 17th, bombshell at the town board meeting. We learned the Rod and Gun Club submitted a site plan on the 28th of September. That's what Lynn Day said. I thought the town reminded me of the Rod and Gun Club. Very secretive, not sharing information with the public. It's hard to believe Lynn did not relay this to someone on the town board. It was 6 days before the 3rd of October meeting. On the 17th of October, Lynn said, pretty much, the Rod and Gun Club could do whatever they wanted, because his interpretation of Article 10, specifically Section 1.5.3, that this was not a new club. Moving their shooting range across the creek, up the road, to creating another shooting range, 2 shooting ranges. Shooting into a steep hillside, not a bank, as Lynn called it. Putting up 2 10 feet by 10 feet trap houses and a warming house in my interpretation, and many others, is a new club. They are not creating a smaller footprint, as Lynn claims, when they are going to shoot lead into a new area. This leaves Tim and I and others in a really threatening situation. No inspections of this new club site. How will we ever know they are 500 feet from our shed? And will they be allowed to shoot 5 days a week, 3 days a week, whenever they feel like it, put up lighting at night? No one knows. Because this town has permitted them to do whatever they want.
Okay, thank you. Tim Farrell?
My name's Tim Farrell, and I'm trying to live at 101 Salmon Creek Road in Leadville. I'd just like to say I am outraged at the treatment that Lisa and I have received at the hand of this board, and particularly the supervisor. We were told that the board had to be careful not to show a bias. So it was that things could only be said that had to go through the process, and the process had to run its course. On October 3rd, I asked what the process was, and Ed, you told me that the board had to wait for the gun club to apply for a permit. At the risk of sounding redundant, they already had, and I believe you knew it. So it looks like the lack of bias is out the window. Before the October 17th meeting, Lynn Day called me at home and asked if Lisa and I could arrive early at the town board meeting, as he had a map he wanted to show us. Lisa was unable to come, so I showed up, and I was shown a map with a new plan for the gun club's new track field. It was pointed out to me that they had reoriented the field and aimed it farther to the east into a steep slope wooded bank. I was shown a line on the map that was drawn in a radius 500 feet from the corner of our house that showed the firing line was just over 500 feet from our house. However, I've measured on that map, and it would appear that our shed and our propane tank are within 500 feet of where they'll be shooting. I wondered why Lynn was showing me that map, because it turns out he wasn't interested in any input because he'd already approved a permit. The orientation is I'm fired into a wooded hillside, and I just wonder how in 5 years they plan to remove the topsoil and recover the lead. You know, the manner in which we've been misdirected and lied to when you conspired with the gun club is the very definition of bias. And I'd like to thank you for that.
Anyone else that wants to have privilege of the floor tonight before we close up?
Done 20 minutes. You have done 20 minutes, just to let you know.
I'm sorry?
It has been open for 20 minutes.
Okay, and we'll close it. Move
Is
on
there
to the
anybody
next.
who's been missed?
Pardon me?
We have the ability to extend if someone has not had a chance to speak. Correct.
Well, once again, I set the ground rules, and to avoid potential for chaos, you know, I've asked other people, 20 minutes are up. If you want to submit their, if they want to submit any written, they're obviously welcome to do that.
But I want to be fair. We gave some people some extra minutes, and we shouldn't give those extra minutes at the cost of somebody else who hasn't spoken.
I'll keep it open if they want.
So I don't know if
Anybody else?
anybody was missed.
Try to be courteous,
Yeah.
they're coming off in 3 minutes.
I know, I just
I
want to
didn't
check.
finish.
No, you had plenty, thank you, sorry.
So I think
We're
we've
fine, yes.
exhausted that. On that note, then we will close the privilege of the floor. Our next item, Guy, do you want to speak about this? Mr. Rory's property there with the...
No, about A year ago or so, you may recall that the town board approved an outside user agreement for Hillcrest Road. And shortly after that, the town adopted a policy saying, and mainly it was because the easements were not as easy to get as people thought, the town adopted a policy saying that an outside user agreement survives only for a year, after which it sunsets. And the people on Hillcrest Road were not subject to having their permit canceled because they didn't need an easement, but they were in the process of lining up someone to drill directionally under the road. Because they were planning on going forward, they were included on the list that was approved for the extension of the consolidated water district, but the way the calendar fell based on the date of their existing permit, they're on the list to have an extension, but the 1 year went up. So they came before the Water and Sewer Advisory Board and said, since we're on the list, since we've got our work scheduled, since we don't need an easement, would you be willing to extend the permit date so that we can come into the water district as originally planned? And the Water and Sewer Advisory Board looked at that issue, and because they don't have the easement and the way it timed out, they recommended unanimously that the board simply extend their permit for another year so that they can come into the water district as was scheduled. So that's the recommendation that came forward to the board. The board can accept it, reject it, do whatever they wish. They're different than most because they don't need an easement.
My understanding is that they, with a variety of other people, will eventually come into the consolidated water district. It's like about 9 of them.
Yeah, there's 9 or 10 properties that have gotten to the point in the process where they either have their permit or they have their easements and are in the process of getting their permit. And rather than keep them as outside users, the policy and plan is to take them in a group and bring them in. It should be noted that they already paid their permit fee, so they're not, by the extension, they're not avoiding their contribution towards the cost of the proceeding.
No, so as what we hope to do is extend that another year with the intent that when you roll people into the consolidated water district, rather than do an outside user agreement, rather than do 1 or 2, the water supervisory board says, let's do 9 or 10 and roll them all in at once. Therefore, because we have to set a public hearing, we have to do other things. So there's a procedure to go through this, and it's time consuming, and it's time consuming to our clerk. This is one reason why she has to have another person here, besides the fact of all the other things that are going on. So having said that, this is the intent of why they're asking for an extension. They're not getting any more benefit out of this. They simply want to do the extension so they can proceed, and then when the time factors happen in hopefully 3-4 months, they get rolled in with a bunch of other people, and then they basically will belong to the consolidated water. So I hope I gave a little bit of a summary accurately. So I guess
the timing is interesting because the draft report to bring them in is already in existence.
Yeah, ironically, they were at the table and they actually saw it for the first time. They were totally unaware of this. They thought they simply wanted to have an extension for a year, that's it. So having said that, the Water and Sewer Advisory Board would like to extend them another year and let the process work out so they get ruled in. But we as a board will have to agree on that. And I don't know if there's a lot of discussion to this or not. It seems to me, once again, I'm only 1 of 5, so, and I was at that meeting, so I want everybody to feel comfortable before they move forward. So I guess my question is, are we?
Yeah.
If we are, do we just
A simple motion to extend it, and that would be sufficient. It's not a new agreement. It's an existing agreement. We're just extending the expiry date so as to allow the map plan and report process to go forward without creating an, for lack of a better term, needless glitch.
So is someone like to make a motion to
extend that?
Murray,
Murray,
132?
yeah, 132 Hillcrest Road, outside user agreement for another year.
I vote. Make the motion.
Okay. And Joe seconds it. Any further discussion? Okay, Ms. Swanson.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I don't think there's anything else on our docket.
Well, do you want to respond to the public comment at all?
No. purpose of public comment is for us to absorb the information, and from the information, we can do research or whatever. Once again, we've also advised the board that to simply go up and discuss this openly now, when there perhaps some litigation involved, I think we'd be irresponsible at this time. When we talk about the process, this is probably one step in a long process.
I would like
People
to,
can vent their,
I would like to add to the comments.
once again,
I'm not going to comment on legality.
I think you're going down a procedure here. This is something that you can comment. Once again, as you discuss this, you're going to say things, I hope, that won't put the town in jeopardy. I know this is an emotional issue, but we've also been advised by our attorney, have we not, at some
Well,
point?
there's in theory a CBA appeal pending, plus whatever else may come.
I want to make, hopefully, a non-inflammatory statement, but acknowledge that people feel misused, and we are hearing you, and we are doing what we need to do as your representatives to try to redress. But I think at the October meeting, we did commit to some funds for actual lead testing, and I assume we're going forward with that. Of the Salmon Creek swimming hole area and the edge of the swimming hole where a lot of people swim. And I believe we should extend the testing down to the edge where it goes into the lake where a lot of the sediment piles up.
Once again, I think this is something that the DEC has also recommended to have people to have wells test. Not only test for that, but test for other bacteria. And I also like to have an idea of what the cost will be for this as we move forward.
Shall I go ahead and talk to some people about what the cost might be?
I will be open-minded to any of that information.
I will bring information back.
And as you know, that Bolton Point has tested theirs, and I think
It tasted the water, but does that contact?
I understand, but what that does, it shows us that there is a tester out there that I think is a separate. They don't test their own, they send it out. So
Right.
I think that would be one that is credible.
Okay.
And that to me is very important.
Do you want to get that contact for us? And
I can give you that
And I'll
contact.
come up with an alternate so we have some ideas.
And to go one step further, when we get the sample, how do we get the sample? Where do we get the sample? How do we, you know what I'm saying? I'm not throwing stones
It's
at this
science,
one, but there's a
and-
procedure.
yes.
Maybe these people come out and get the sample. That would be wonderful if they could. Then it goes from seed to harvest.
They have a procedure for sampling, and we'll follow it.
Yeah.
Once again,
It needs to be scientifically
the
done.
first thing I think is to reach out to the people that do the sampling, for instance, and ask, okay, Bolton Point, do they come out and do their own sampling? If they come out and sample, take a sample, you know, the ones that tested, or do they send it out? So there's some research to be done with that. We do have the name of the company. And having said that, I'm going to pop up here real quick. But if we have that, the main concern I have is to the sampling process. So that
It
people
should
are
be highly
comfortable with it.
respected, yes.
But also, as the DC has recommended to individuals that they test their own water. For a variety of different things.
We're talking about testing public products, public uses, and I think that's our responsibility.
I don't have an argument with this. What I am trying to do is implement this in a way that is, I don't know if the word acceptable is possible, but the fact is you try to be credible.
Right, it has to be credible. That's our intention, okay? I just wanted to state that. We were still proceeding with our concern for the health of our citizens.
Yes.
And getting more information.
Yes. Any other, shall we?
I would like to move into executive session if that's possible.
For what purpose?
I would like to discuss the activities of one of the employees.
And also potential litigation.
Yes.
Is that one of our? Proposed pending current litigation, would that be? Well, I'm not sure. I mean, is
I'm
it?
not sure.
I mean, there is, as Ted has noted many times, there is only certain criteria for us to go into executive session.
I believe we can go in for personnel matters now.
I think is that.
You can go into discuss the pay or performance of a particular person. We can't just go in generally for personnel.
Right. That would be my one.
Okay, so who wants to make the motion?
Move it.
Okay, Mrs. Munson?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Okay.
That means everybody can go home